that the definition of the derivative was the same as f prime of x is equal to, this is where we tied to limits. The limits as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x over h. A lot of those we've seen in the online quizzes, or we saw them some other places. Kind of came up in limits last class, where we started saying this is the definition of the derivative, therefore if you can identify what f of x is and take the derivative of it, that's just your answer without having to do any limits at all. The alternate definition was if we had a couple of these we saw in place of the x's, and this came up during limits as well. If you saw something that looked a little bit more like, I'm just using 2 for an example. We had limits that looked like this. And we said this is not exactly the definition of a derivative, but it's the derivative at a particular number of 2 instead of the definition. And so those were the kinds that we said, okay, even though there's a number back here, we pulled the number back out and expressed that as f of x. We then took the derivative of that and then plugged our 2 back in at the end. If you are thinking of the right thing, this occurred in our limits unit review on page 5. Question number 21, it came up. And it's come back up in the online quizzes as well. Okay? During our derivatives unit, we also talked about average rate of change. Average rate of change was that f of b minus f of a over b minus a. This was just the slope between 2 points. Okay, another way of saying average rate of change. Instantaneous rate of change was where we took the derivative and plugged in our value c, or whatever we called it. So that it's not an average because there's not 2 points. It's just instantaneous derivative of that point. We did a lot with the equation of the tangent line. How did we leave the equation of the tangent line formula? Or what was the formula we used for it? Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Those we slowly talked about not solving because that saves us time and saves us errors. If we were asked to find the horizontal tangent line, okay, or where it had a horizontal tangent line, what did we do with that? Yep, so we found our derivative, f prime of x, and we set it equal to 0, and then solved. What about vertical tangent lines? What was the difference with that? Yep, f prime of x was equal to undefined, and solved that. Quick review, product rule. If we are expressing our function as f of x times g of x, our derivative is f prime of x times g of x plus f of x times g prime of x. And then our quotient rule was very similar, except it had what sign in it instead on the top? A negative. So it looked like f prime of x times g of x minus f of x times g prime of x all over g of x squared. And then our chain rule was where we take the derivative of the outside function, f prime, we leave the inside function inside, and then multiply by the derivative of the inside function. Okay. Within derivatives, we had implicit. What was implicit differentiation? It was the dy dx. Yep. That was when we did left to right because we can't solve for y, and we include our dy dx wherever we needed it. Okay? Related rates. This was from our notes here. Just remembering related rates. Draw your figure if possible. We listed all the given information, all with respect to t, noticing whether the rate of change is positive or negative. We had different equations that related the variables. We did volume of cones. We did volume of spheres. Surface area, I don't think, came up too much. So use the different geometry equations for those. Differentiate with respect to time, and then substitute and solve those out. Okay, and that was all included in Unit 2. It's been a minute since we did related rates, so our review on that will probably be very helpful to us, okay? Following this is all of the review practice material, okay? This is one of those that we have 2 full days on it. So I would mentally split half and half. That doesn't have to mean you go straight through the first half and then straight through the second half. Because I know sometimes it's like too much of one thing. So it may be you want to do a few questions on the first couple pages and then skip over until you find some related rates and do a few of those. You might want to do all the related rates in one day. It's just kind of up to you how you want to handle that. There are multiple choice questions at the back of this as well on pages 25, 26. There's some calculator ones on 20. We're going up through page 27 in the next 2 days. Again, if you feel like you can get a good chunk done, because we're starting now and going through the end of the period, and you want to pause and do some Unit 6 test corrections, you are welcome to do that. You can work with other people. If you want to move around, that's fine. Let me know if you have questions. That's where we're at.